So there I am watching the Paddy Pimblett Jared Gordon fight, and I didn't tweet, I didn't pick up my phone, I didn't text with anyone.
Your silence
because I just wanted to be locked in.
Yeah,
I wanted to be locked in. After watching that fight, guys, and we haven't really talked beforehand, so I don't know what you're going to say. I believe that is one of the worst decisions in the history of the UFC. I think that was at worst 29-28 Jared Gordon. I think you can make a very strong case for 30-27. I do not know how all three judges could score that. Not even one dissenter could score that for Paddy Pimblett. All three scored it 29-28 for Paddy Pimblett. I don't know how you can give the first round to Paddy. By the way, in case you're wondering, these are the scorecards. Doug Crosby gave Paddy the first and second, gave Jared the third. Chris Lee gave Paddy the second and third, and Ron McCarthy gave Paddy the second and first. I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can't give him the first. I don't understand how you give him honestly, I don't understand how you give him the third. I don't understand how you give him any round. That being said, I really do think it's one of the worst decisions. I feel for Jared Gordon. I thought he fought great. That left hand was landing left, right, and center. And
Paddy never picked it up the whole time. That whole fight, never picked up that left hand. Just kept landing.
Think he will regret the third round. I thought he clinched a little too much. I thought he should have just disengaged and fought. Chuck, do you agree with me or do you not agree with me? I'd love to hear it.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. I actually had it 30-27. So when you're saying you could make that argument, I mean, that in real time, that's what I had. I could have understood 100% a 29-28 scorecard, but that second round to me was the closest. So that could have been a swing win, but I thought the first was fairly definitive, just watching it. And then I thought the third was pretty definitive. So I felt like I did feel, though, you guys tell me if you felt this too, like that it was going to be an adventure on those scorecards. And I don't know if it's just because Paddy Pimblett being who he is, and you're like, will this affect, obviously there's an energy in the room, and you have three judges, that are cage side watching a fight. They can be affected by the atmosphere. And you get a guy like that in there who has all this hype. It's not like they've been sequestered and they don't know what's going on with this guy and all that stuff. And you wonder if they get carried away. You know what I mean? They're seeing things that they don't know. I don't know what it is. But the bottom line is, I'm like, if you're truly looking at objectively, he lost that fight. Paddy didn't win that fight. That's just the bottom line.
I scored a 29-28 for Gordon. And I thought the same as you in the third. I was like, he's suffocating him, but when you look at the criteria, he's not scoring on the criteria. Now, look, he's like Paddy's not scoring either. For a lot of these, they're just up against, right? But they're up against the fence, and then Paddy, I think, does he finish on his back in the third?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking, right, it's coming down to literal positions here. It's coming down to positions because there's not a lot of stuff going on in the striking at all. First round, I don't know how it goes against Gordon. And the second round, I can remember the commentary team making quite a big deal at the end of at the very end. I think
the last 5 seconds or something, right?
Yeah. They went like, did he take the round? I was kind of going, no, I don't think he could. When the scorecards were read out, I started going, how? When they said unanimous decision, I was like, well, that's it for Gordon. And then when they said it for Paddy, I was kind of like, how would you go? How would you get that score? And the only way I can think you can is you give Paddy the third and you give him the second for that situation at the end of the round. That's the only way.
That would be the only acceptable.
But honestly, two of the judges gave Paddy the first. Two of the judges.
That's
I
don't understand that.
That's befuddling. That's like.
But that means they don't know what they're looking at then, because Paddy was throwing a lot. He was throwing a lot of hands, a lot of jab, straight, jab, backhand. But they were like Gordon was catching a lot of them on the gloves, and then he was coming back over and checking with the left hand, which I thought was landing pretty clearly. The
left hand was tremendous for him every time he was throwing it. Paddy had success with the leg kicks, right? He did have success with the leg kicks, but I thought for sure, Jared, the first round ends, I'm like, all right, Jared got that 10-9. Second round, I did think, because I know these guys are fazed by the crowd. You know that they're fazed by the crowd, and you know they're fazed by the moment. And I will say this right now, there's a part of me that wonders, with some of these judges, wonders if they are trying to score fights based on what they think the promotion wants. I feel comfortable saying that after seeing what Doug Crosby has done this weekend, giving Danny Sabatello a 50-45 on Friday, which is one of the worst scorecards in a silo that I've ever seen in my life of 50-45 for Danny Sabatello when most people had it 48-47. MMA Decisions posted that that's the first time ever in a 5-round fight that there's a 50-45 for the opposite guy. Like that's how bad that scorecard is. 50-45 for the guy who lost the fight.
Wow, man.
And then you come back. Somehow this guy is still working. Somehow they fly him from Connecticut to Vegas to work this card.
I was going to say, did you wave on him? You guys were doing the opposite trajectory. You were going from Vegas the other way, wave in the air.
And then we get this scorecard and we get the rest. And so I was wondering, I was like, all right, are they going to give him the second? And then you see the third and you're like, Jared, this isn't the right game plan. This isn't the right game plan. Like he should have disengaged to at least keep doing what he was doing in the first and second. But I think this is very egregious. Now, Ptsy, you have been watching Paddy longer than both of us combined, Chuck and I.
Mm-hmm.
Assess his performance for us because he seemed very happy. He was saying fight of the night. He was saying this and that. How would you assess that performance?
I just don't
putting aside the robbery and all that, just like the performance.
Yeah, he never tapped into what I think makes him so exciting to watch, which is unpredictability. He did at one stage. I thought it was a beautiful choke attempt he had. At one stage, he leaned over Jared's back and they ended up in a choke position. Like, that's the kind of wild stuff. Like, I've never seen someone so comfortable clinching Paddy. You know, aside from that choke, Gordon looked very safe in his clinch positions against Paddy. Usually that's where you see like all the highlight reels were created, the flying triangles. He did have that nice choke attempt, as I said, but I think in his other UFC fights so far, he has managed to really make an impression on the feet, which he didn't do a lot in Cage Warriors. This is a new side of his game that we're seeing since he came into the UFC, maybe his later Cage Warriors fights, but he just didn't seem to be able to set that precedent earlier. He didn't seem to be able to make Gordon back up the way he's made other guys back up to where they're nearly frozen in the headlights, right? Like they're nearly like, what the hell is this guy going to do? He just couldn't land that stinging shot on Gordon to be able to initiate that kind of game, I don't think.
It's pretty funny that we mentioned Gordon not being affected by this type of spotlight, just kind of who he is, where he's been, the kind of things he's lived through. And I felt like that was in full effect. Every time, I know exactly what you're saying, those moments when a guy looks like, oh, you know, they're bewildered in there, and that's when Paddy kind of capitalizes and pounces. You could see that wasn't going to happen in this fight early. I mean, I never really thought that he would get in that trouble after the first round. I was like, he's not going to do that, you know? So it was kudos to him to kind of fight the way he did and to stay as poised as he did and to stand in there and land that left. Like once he knew it was going, I mean, he was going with what worked. You're probably right about the third. He probably should have disengaged there and kept piecing him up. I mean, why wouldn't you in that situation? But man, you ask a guy to basically be a buried B-side, and I mean like where you're literally a footnote in this matchup. You're not even, nobody's really talking about you. You're supposed to be the guy who loses this fight, and you put on that performance. That's got to really sting because this was kind of his Super Bowl, right? Like this was his moment in the MMA. This is probably as big as it gets for Gordon. I really believe that this was his big moment, and to get robbed on that, you got to feel for the guy. You know what I mean? Like that's one of those things. I think he fought a really good fight, and he showed very well in that fight. And you hate to see him, just be kind of brushed aside, and then right back to the Paddy celebration. It was a very strange thing there.
First, 10 seconds, I thought he was a little tentative, a little, I don't know. He had that weird kick that he threw and then took back and stumbled. But other than that, first of all, the size difference was very noticeable, and he was getting in there. Paddy was leaving himself open. His chin was up. He was not protecting himself, and he kept nailing him with that left. And again, honest, no joke. This is why I didn't want to engage on Twitter throughout the fight, because people would have said this or that. After the third round, I thought he won 30-27. And then there was a part of me that was justifying. I was like, oh, maybe they're going to give it to Paddy at the end. I don't know how you can really justify the third for Paddy. Like, what did he do?
I don't know.
In that third round. At least there were the clinch, and there were a couple of shots from Jared. There was hardly anything. I really am baffled by this one.
Do you have
it's a
final
very,
stats
very,
there?
very bad look. Yeah, I have them right here.
Because they said something like the striking was, I know it was in Gordon's favor.
So in the third round, the striking, Jared Gordon threw 4 significant strikes, right?
Yeah.
He landed all 4 of them. Paddy Pimblett threw 15, but landed 6. So, there wasn't a lot going on. And it's, so are you going to give it to the guy who landed or the guy who landed 2 more? Well, what were those 2 more? Who the hell knows?
Right.
So listen, that was probably to me the toughest of the rounds to call. But then you go to the first round. Jared Gordon threw 51 significant strikes, landed 30. Paddy threw 70, only landed 29. So Jared was at 58% to 41%. Second round, Jared threw 46 significant strikes, landed 24, 52%. Paddy threw 70, but only landed 28, 40%. So were they giving it to Paddy for the activity? But I mean, you see it right here. Like there's not a lot of connection. Very, very strange. Very strange. And we have to say, takedowns.
I thought that they read it quick.
Total Paddy Pimblett 0 for 3, Jared Gordon 3 for 6.
See, I mean, I don't know.
In total, by the way, Chuck, the total significant strikes, Paddy 63 of 155 for 40%, Jared Gordon 58 of 101 for 57%. Total strikes, by the way, Paddy Pimblett 97 of 194, Jared Gordon 100 of 143. Like he was the more accurate fighter, he was the more damaging fighter. Like his blows especially in the first round were rocking Paddy. What did Paddy do to him?
Nothing.
And I don't get it. And I know there's going to be someone out there being like, Ariel's like, I was truly trying to watch this.
This is fairly universal, at least from what I was seeing. I mean, I saw
this isn't me saying like Alex Pereira and Izzy was stopped too early. Like this is, I mean, I feel like I'm on the right side of this one.
I think you are. I mean, like just usually you see if it's a close fight, people are like, "Hey, don't use the word robbery. It was just a close fight."
This is a robbery.
But I saw most. I mean, like what was it? MMA decisions or whatever. They compile like the list of people. Everybody had Gordon. Everybody, the straight down had Gordon. I mean, I didn't see one Paddy. Rare. Yeah. So I mean, I think you're on the right side here.
Okay, we all agree. What about that post fight interview? I mean, that post fight interview. I didn't know that I could own more real estate than the real estate that I have in Dana White's head. But apparently, there's some nice beachfront property over there in Paddy's mind. The first thing out of his mouth, I tried to get Matt Mitrione like 12 years ago to shout out the MMA Hour when he was doing the Mitrione Minute. He said he was going to, but never came through. Up until tonight, I've never been referenced by anyone in a post-fight interview.
Not even McCorkle?
Thank you, Paddy. I finally got to cross one off the bucket list. I got Virna Jandiroba to walk out, JRC to walk out to a song. We had Casey O'Neill show up with a Thug No shirt to Media Day. I've never been referenced in a post-fight interview.
Well,
let me cross one off the list.
You've had your scripts read, though. Like you gave Daniel Cormier his thing he was going to say.
Yeah, but I've not been referenced.
I know. I understand.
Not been referenced.
I got
So this is a big moment. It was like, wow, I was kind of upset for Jared, but I was very excited. Now, we didn't get confirmation from Joe whether or not he paid for the interview or not. I thought it was a great zinger. I thought it was very clever. It was very funny. Joe no-sold it. Do you think he understood what we were talking about?
That's what I was going to say. Do you think he knows what's going on? I mean,
it looks like it looked to me like he was still waiting for Paddy to finish the sentence. Like he was just standing there, like he was just.
He didn't give any kind of like indication where you know that he knows what's happening. You know.
Yeah.
But
I think he knew, and they probably told him in his ear to no sell it.
Yeah. I bet you're right.
Not. What'd you guys?
No,
think?
I mean.
Did you think it was funny?
It's pretty. Well, I mean, it was obviously. I was like, "Is he going to say something?" That was my first thought. Like, is he going to say something? And then he comes out with that, and I thought the exact same thing you did, which is, wow, he had that on the forefront of his mind to bring up. So, I did feel like it weighed heavily on him. I'm not kidding. Like we talked about this going in during the weigh-in show. I think that there was some pretty serious line drawing and backlash, like that he was dealing with. So it's probably on his mind. He felt like he needed to address something or make light of it,
But as we predicted, like he came off as a big star. Everyone was like, I none of this translated to the reaction tonight, right? Did you feel like any of his popularity was hurt, PT, by any of this?
No, you looked into the crowd there. There's everybody wearing blonde wigs. Like, I mean, when we were looking at the press conference and we were looking at the weigh-ins, maybe there was a bit more from the billboards, but. Yeah, it seemed like there was really Paddy fever there. And like as much as I was saying this to you guys before we went live, as much as like the fan base seems to be adamant and the vast majority of people scored this fight for Gordon, the way Paddy is and it's the polarizing thing he has, I don't know if this is completely something that force his opinion down. I think he's going to use this, the fact that people are up against him. He's going to try and use it and aggregate it into something else, like, because this is a new, well, it's not new, but he certainly understands this social media and media online and maybe how to utilize these things more than other people do, I feel.
Yeah, he might know how to use it, but I think he puts way too much stock in it. Like him being so far deep into the comments, battling people about this on my page too. Even on my page, doesn't even follow me, and he's battling people on my page. What are you doing, man? 2 days before the fight, like what? Like, not all of this was very avoidable. All of this was very avoidable. And again, not to rehash the whole thing, but like you brought it up to curry favor with the boss, and look at what happened. And then you got his manager saying that there's trolls coming after them. There's no trolls, man. These are sane-minded human beings who clearly knew that you guys came off very, very poorly. And so, not a great week in the big, Vegas debut. Do you think he fights on the UK card? And if so, do you guys, do you put him in there against a top 15 guy, or is that?
No, clearly not. Like, they need to, and look, we've been saying this before, they put him with Gordon as well. If you want to get the most out of Paddy, you got to continue with a slow build. If this showed you anything, it's that, like, obviously you don't throw him, levels above. Like, you're not going to match him with someone even like Bobby Green next, right? Like someone that's around the top 20 mark, top 25. Like, I think they'll probably do something like Vince Pichel or something like that, to be honest. Like, just a guy that's been around, has had wins in the organization, because you couldn't, even if you scored that fight for Paddy, you can't come away saying he passed the test with flying colours tonight. Like, even if you do have him winning that fight, I don't think anyone's going, Jesus, like, he looked brilliant, and this was a fantastic performance that obviously shows him as a contender in the next 2 years.